Hi guys, good evening and welcome to another Insta Live at 5 with Adventure Pulse. I'm often asked by people, when you go camping and you're out in the wilderness, what's the most important piece of equipment that you need to have? Now, most people presume it's something like this, yeah, a cool Swiss Army knife or a pocket knife. This is a more popular one. This is a Victorinox rescue tool, and if you can see, it actually has serrated edges which allows it to cut through bark, tree, rope, etc. But for me personally, I think the most useful tool you can have when you're camping is rope. For most mountaineers, honestly, this is the most important equipment that you can have. Um Ropes are actually the best accessory which allows you to literally climb mountains. It's useful on rocks, snow, and ice. Um, a rope like this can actually be used very effectively and can be allowed to do multiple things. Now, this is more for, well, it's it's again a Kermantle core rope, but you don't really have to have something fancy. You can actually use any kind of rope, a nylon rope, piece of string, and funnily enough, even a shoelace, which can come into super useful handiness. The brilliant thing about having rope is that when you use it outdoors, it can be used to tie stuff together, uh, tie a tree, tie a bark, tie a campsite, or pitch a tent. In fact, a lot of the bikers out there, ropes are particularly useful when you're securing equipment to your bike. So that's the real main thing about a rope. The funny thing is this, that most people have no clue about what to use it for. And the best way to use it for is actually for tying down stuff. And that's when you need to know knots. Uh, I think the best and most popular knot that everybody knows is, of course, the shoelace knot. Uh, it's very simple, but today's session is all about getting naughty, uh, understanding the basics of a rope. So, irrespective of what kind of rope you have, I'm actually going to use something that's a little bigger so all of you guys can see. This is a rock climbing rope. It's a dynamic rope. And just to give you a perspective of different parts of a rope, well, usually this is called the end, okay, the dead end or the free end. And the rest of this part is called the standing end. The basic idea of a rope, of a knot, is to allow you to use it for different techniques of securing things. Okay. um, the different aspects also of it. This is just a plain straight rope, but the moment you form a loop, it's also called a bite. The name actually comes from the fact that if you bite it, you end up forming this. Interestingly, this is not a loop. So if you're holding your rope like this and you do this, that's when you get a loop. And of course, there are different kinds of knots. So the basic knot I have to introduce you guys to is something that's called the overhand knot. So if you have the rope like this, put this across your thumb, and the rope goes over, that's called an overhand. Okay. If it goes under, it's called an underhand. So if you take the rope, put it across, and bring it up again, you got an overhand knot. And if you bring it under and pull it through, you got an underhand knot. And it's as simple as that. It's important to understand this. This is also called the basic thumb knot because it runs along your thumb. And if you can understand the basic concept of this, then it gives you a lot of understanding of all the other knots that we're going to learn. So we're not going to make this really complicated. For the very first masterclass on knots, we're going to learn just 3 basic knots. So the overhand knot, which is what you guys already know. We're going to know the reef knot, very popular among sailors and sailor boys because it was used to reef a sail or tie a sail. And the third kind of knot, which is not really a knot but is very popular in securing things, is called a clove hitch. Uh, if you guys are really keen and can follow what we're doing, then I will even show you a figure of 8. Yeah. Okay. So this is the very basic form of a knot, right? So you loop it on your finger, goes over, comes through, and that's it, right? There's a modification of this. The modification of this is also called the I knot. Yeah. So when you loop it around, you bring it under and you pull it through. Now this forms a simple figure of 8. Now the reason why I'm showing you this is that it will come into practice in exactly 2 minutes. So I've just showed you 2 varieties. One is the simple overhand knot and of course the figure of 8. Now imagine you take a bigger loop of this, okay? You bring it around and you can overhand and you pull it through. Here you go. This is called an I knot. Now it's pretty useful as a knot because it actually allows you to secure things. For example, if you have a carabiner, then it allows you to secure it to a carabiner, which is pretty cool. Yeah, but it's not the strongest of knots, right? In fact, Suchit, who just signed in, probably hates this knot and he can't even believe that this is called a knot. So a much better alternative of this is if you take the dead end and start looping it through and take about a meter of it. Yeah, meter is about this much, from your thumb to the middle of your chest. Okay, and you make one overhead, bring it from behind and pull it through. If you notice, it looks exactly like what I showed you earlier, which is what we call a figure of 8 knot. Now this is a pretty cool knot because it's one of the toughest, most secure knots. In fact, as you pull it, it actually gets tighter. So it's really, really useful when you're securing stuff. In fact, it's a popular knot used in rock climbing, especially when you need to tie off a harness. It gives you a really, really good traction. The biggest advantage of this knot is that it's super easy to undo. And that's the biggest challenge that most people have. The moment you tie a knot, you're like, oh crap, who's gonna unknot it? It is such a pain. But with this, all you have to do is pull it out from inside. And that's it. It's as simple as that. The next knot that I got to teach you is pretty popular. It's also called the reef knot. And it's extremely useful if you're trying to tie 2 dead ends together. So imagine you have 2 ends like this. The trick is it's left over right and then right over left. Or you can even start with right. So it's right over left and then left over right. Now, if I take these 2 and I cross it over and I pull it under, similarly cross it over and pull it under. It's interesting. If you get it right, then you can actually see these 2 ends parallel to each other. So if I push it together, it really looks like as if there are 2 loops that are intertwined. Again, the brilliant thing about this knot is if I pull it, it actually gets tighter. And that's the coolest thing about it. This kind of knot is very, very useful. So I'm going to show it to you again. You have 2 ends of the rope. You cross right over left, then left over right. And as I said, if you push this together, it literally looks like there are 2 loops that are intertwined. Now the best part about this knot is that it allows you to tie 2 ends of ropes together. That means if you have one rope and it's too short to do the work and you need to secure it with another, then you have a chance that you can tie it off together. And that's the cool thing about a reef knot. Each one of these knots has a different purpose. So the figure of 8 knot that I showed you is for securing and tying your rope to a stationary anchor, whether it's something like this, a carabiner, or even a tree. The reef knot is to secure two pieces of ropes together. Now the third kind of knot that I'm going to teach you is pretty simple. Oh, there's a good question from Karishma. Do the ropes have to be the same diameter for a reef knot? Actually, yes, they do. If you have two ropes that are of different diameters, let's say something like this and something like this, that is a different kind of knot which we'll teach you probably at a later time. Okay, the third kind of knot is actually not a knot. It's called a clove hitch. Yeah. Now, it's pretty cool and is very useful. Jatin says, hi sir, I complete my advanced mountaineering course. If you completed your advanced mountaineering course, then trust me, they drill the knots into you until you know them backwards and forwards. Okay, so let's talk about a clove hitch. Now, this is my personal favorite kind of knot. It's a hitch. Basically, that means you're using the friction of the rope to create resistance and tightening itself. Okay, so if you have the end of the rope here and you have the standing side of the rope or the standing rope, all you have to do is run it through your hand, okay, and you make a loop on one side, and on this side you make a loop in the opposite direction. Okay, so if you look at this two together right now, you'll clearly make out that the loops are in two opposite directions. Yeah, so I'll do it again. So this side I loop it towards you, this side I loop it away from you, and now with these two loops I just bring them together, one over the other, and that's it. That's a clove hitch. The cool thing about a clove hitch is if you pull this side, it actually gets so tight that you can't go anywhere. The brilliant thing also about a clove hitch is that it's also very easy to adjust. So for example, if I put a clove hitch over here and I pull this end, it's not going to go anywhere. But if I pull the center loop over here, it loosens out and I can actually adjust my rope accordingly. If I want to shift it back, again pull it in the center, and it's as easy as that. That's the cool thing about a clove hitch. This kind of knot is absolutely brilliant in terms of tying up luggage, to anything, to a truck, to a jeep, to a motorbike. So it's pretty cool. That's why I love it. It's very diverse and pretty easy to use. I'll show it to you again. Imagine that this is the dead end of the rope. This is the standing rope. So I just run it a little bit and I make a loop towards you. It's important to remember that this loop is in the opposite direction. Now, the moment I do that, I just put the loops together, one behind the other. If you put it together in front of each other, it's just going to fall apart. So you have to actually loop it in such a way that the two ends that are dropping down are one behind each other. And yep, I don't know whether that's a better angle which you guys can see, but there you go. It gives you something to do. Clip it on, secure this end. Now it's very important to remember that whenever you do tie a knot, it's always good to have another thumb knot at the end of it, just to tie it off. This is called a safety knot. So you're just trying to be absolutely sure that this is going to be fine. Here's your clove hitch, and here is your safety knot. Karishma asks, doesn't make a difference if you interchange the direction of the left and the right loop, will it still work? Not really. It's actually a pretty good question. You don't have to really worry too much about it. I mean, if we do it as well. So imagine this is the standing end. I bring it here. Earlier I was looping it over here. If I put it in the opposite direction, you just have to remember that this side of the rope has to be in the opposite direction to it. And when you bring both the rabbit ears together, they have to be in front of each other. That's it. It's as simple as that. It gives you a lot of options in terms of securing luggage, equipment. It's super tight. And if you put a normal thumb knot, we also call it a safety knot because it's always used as a safety knot, it adds a lot of security. So just in case you think the rope is going to slip, it gets stopped right away. And that's the cool thing about knots. I think when you go for your mountaineering course, on an average, you have to learn at least, I think, 20, 22 different knots. But there's 7 basic knots, and if you learn those 7 basic knots, um, you can survive in possibly any situation. Whether it's sailing on board a ship, whether it's motorbiking, or if it's in the mountains as well. These are the 3 basic knots I had for you guys. If you have any more questions as far as knots are concerned and rope work is concerned, let us know. It's pretty cool. I've seen guys in the mountains make an entire seat harness out of a rope. I've even seen guys during the search and rescue course make an entire stretcher out of a rope. I've actually been able to rappel down with a guy behind me out of making a seat harness rope. So it becomes a really, really good option. Sometimes if you want to shorten a rope, so if you just loop it and the extra part you pull it through, it helps shorten it. And if you keep doing this over and over again, it actually looks like a daisy chain. But the cool thing about it is if you pull it, it opens up. And that's what the plan is. Now, the really cool thing about Adventure Pulse is that exactly in 10 days' time, we've launched a series which is called the Junior Mountaineering Course, where we're going to be conducting it for kids from the age group of 8 to 13, where on each session, remotely of course, through the Zoom platform, we are going to embark on an expedition to climb each one of the 7 summits. It's going to be a fantastic journey. In that, we're also going to be throwing in a lot of cool stuff like ropes and knots for kids, basic first aid and safety, how to pack your bag. It's an interactive session. It's a lot of fun. Log on to Instagram, log on to our Facebook event. The moment you do that, get in touch with us and we can send you all the details that you want. If you don't have kids, I'm sure you got a really cute niece or nephew who would be interested in something like that. Why waste the time? Why wait for the outdoors to open? Here we are at Adventure Pulse, bringing the outdoors right to your very home. It's gonna be fun. I'm super kicked about it. We are visiting each continent, and in each one of these continents, we're learning a little bit of geography, a little bit of the culture, getting to know about the tradition of the people, the animals that are there. And well, if you're a 30-year-old, that's absolutely fine. You're more than welcome to join us for that session. Promise to make it as fun and as entertaining as possible. Fortunately, we don't have anything for 5-year-olds yet. I think the attention span may be a little difficult for us to engage, but we are recommending it for 9 to 13. But if you're a kid at heart and you're 30 or 40 or 50 and you're bored with work, you can always pretend to be at work and log on to our Zoom session. We're planning to have it at from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock every day from the 22nd of June to the 28th of June. So that's what the plan is. So thanks guys. Thanks so much for logging on today's masterclass as far as ropes and knots are concerned. This is a brilliant initiative taken by Suchit, and hopefully some of the other sessions will have a lot more fun for you, possibly from an outdoor scene as well and an outdoor location. So thanks, and thank you so much for all the compliments. Yeah. Okay. See you next time, next Friday, live at 5.